so to speak.
Hi. I really liked what you said about thinking broadly, and my question is about agriculture, actually. So given that livestock production takes up, higher estimates are 45% of land and 51% of greenhouse gas emissions, what are your thoughts about moving away from animal agriculture as a way to move Africa's land towards more productivity, but also moving the world towards sustainability?
Yeah, livestock is pretty important in terms of diversifying diets in Africa. If you look at where there's malnutrition, it's often that you're not getting enough meat, and when you do get meat, a lot of these nutrition problems go away. And in terms, Africa's greenhouse gas emissions are kind of a rounding error in the whole picture. That is where the suffering from climate change will take place. That is, tropical agriculture, which is dependent on the timing of rains and the rains not being too light or too intense, is the most fragile because they don't have storage, their subsistence. The fact they make twice as much in one year and nothing in the next year doesn't work for them. And so it's really unjust. And so creating crops or livestock genetics that can withstand these shocks is fairly important. In the long run, there's a couple of startups that are kind of at an early stage, few brilliant people working on synthetic meat. And in a, say, 20-year time frame, the world should be able to make something that can fool you in terms of it tastes like meat, and that the energy intensity, that is the net amount of grain. To make beef, you take about 5 calories worth of grain to make 1 calorie worth of beef. So beef is particularly inefficient, beef and pork. Chicken's a little better, fish is a little better, but direct grain is, of course, 1-to-1. And so we ought to be able to change these ratios through innovation. Until then, we work on animal genetics, animal vaccines to help the Africans, who a lot of their value comes through that livestock piece. And so it's up to us to do the innovations to get them off of that. In the meantime, it's something they really need for their diet, so we can't really discourage them and make them bear that part of the burden.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Gates. My name is Greg Bybee. I'm a graduate student at the Business School and the School of Education. And a few classmates and I just landed a few hours ago from South Africa, where we met with a company called All Life, which is essentially a private, for-profit insurance company that insures HIV and AIDS victims, or patients. And I was wondering if you know anything about this in particular, or if you can speak to other for-profit, it's actually a single bottom line initiative that are having a big impact in the HIV space.
Well, I don't know that for-profit entities are having a big impact. There are 2 countries with big HIV epidemics that are quite a bit wealthier than others. That is, South Africa and Botswana are over $10,000 GDP per person. Now, they're highly inequitable in terms of the people live in townships where the average income is more like $1,500 per person, and then you have sort of first world living conditions nearby. And we're always interested in creative ideas. It's been a disappointment so far that the private sector doctors in South Africa have not been organized, and I largely blame the government for this, to create capacity. So for example, on male circumcision, the slowest country in the world that we've targeted is South Africa, that they just haven't gotten going, even though it was piloted there, that hasn't developed. And I'd be interested in understand the economics of, if somebody needs AIDS drugs and they don't have enough money to buy those drugs, typically you need aid money to come in. Now, South Africa, because they're richer than the other countries, because the poor countries have increased burdens, more people they have on drugs, South Africa's been told that their aid is going to be ramped down over a period of years. So they have a huge challenge. Now, they have more economic resources locally to deal with that, but whether the government steps in, of course, the government in South Africa was the worst under Mbeki. Now under Zuma, they've been somewhat better, much better by comparison. And so whether they keep that up to the point where even if aid stays flat, they will not be getting the same share they've been getting is interesting. And drawing on the private sector skill sets for efficiency and things could be part of that. So I'd be interested in learning about it. But as yet, the private sector in Africa is not a meaningful part of AIDS treatment activity.